Hello, my name's Lorraine Hart from Community Land Use. I was asked to make a contribution to Trafford Housing Trust's thinking about reviewing its rents, and I suppose my paper is very much based on a fairly simple proposition, which is that you need to, rather than taking right, we're going to do it like this approach, that it sets out some principles for doing it, which means that all of the options for rent relief that are mentioned in the invitation to contribute are considered within the framework of two main things. The first is the housing assets themselves, and the other side is the assets that tenants have got, which I think is a mainly neglected area of endeavour for any housing provider. And of course, by tenant assets I mean their aspirations, their education, their savings, the skills that they've got, and how that might be put together with the possibilities offered by the housing assets, because as we all know, different housing assets have got different condition, they've got different costs, they've got different opportunities when it comes to thinking about how they might be sold, how the cost to users might be driven down by improvements prior to that. And once you've filled in those two halves of a matrix, what tenant assets are, what the housing assets are and can offer into the future, it's then possible to think about using all of the possibilities for rent relief to try and hit a sweet spot where not only is it possible for tenants to be given a route potentially to individual ownership, potentially to collective ownership of an asset or their homes, but also where rent relief can provide a stepping stone not to a change of tenure but to a change of their lives via using the skills and capabilities they've got that are valuable to you as a landlord, whether it's they'll clean their block, they'll maintain it, they'll improve it so that it performs better, but also where they might offer some of those skills and capabilities to the wider neighbourhood because you think it's valuable or somebody else does, and it's that somebody else is willing to pay for it. I think the advantages to this approach are not just that it probably better meets your general mission as a housing provider over and above providing housing, but also is realistic in terms of the current political feel about rented housing and the subsidy that's provided to it, but also what the real limitations and constraints are likely to be on all housing providers going forward in the climate of austerity. But a combination of looking at these two things, I think, would provide a data-driven approach to looking at localising and decentralising management and ownership, so that the problems of scale that seem always to arise with housing providers in terms of problems that there are about keeping quality, keeping people happy, both the provider and the tenants, can be addressed. And if it's done gradually, my view is that gradualism creates more sustainability. Shock changes tend not to be a good way to go about things, whereas gradual sustainable change that's based on real data and real knowledge about what the constraints and opportunities are that people are operating in is much more likely to yield long-term benefits. So I think if you put those two principles in the forefront of the way that you approach looking at rents, thinking about the two sides of the asset and thinking about the possibilities that they provide in terms of changing tenure, changing management, you're more likely to be more than just a registered housing, social housing provider, and more likely to be addressing your mission, the wider aspects of your mission. And I should say, just on ending, that all of the, in terms of next steps, the kind of asset auditing that would have to be the starting point for any of this, I will pretty much eat this video camera if it wasn't the case that there will be staff in Trafford Housing Trust who will know where to start, who will know blocks or groups of poverty or groups of property or groups of tenants who can be brought together to look at the possibilities for taking more responsibility, having more choice, and using whatever you do that's progressive in the way of providing rent relief to change their lives. Because it will start where they are, rather than being driven by what seems on the face of it to be a good and equitable and progressive thing to do. That when it comes to looking at the detail, just dissolves to dust. So do have a look at my paper. I've kind of systematically addressed some of the issues and suggested a starting point for doing it. And good luck.